To introduce this subject, I'd like to show how the Anabasis, and by extension Xenophon's other historical account, the Hellenica, fits into the bigger picture of 5th and 4th century historical narratives. Even among his contemporaries, Xenophon was recognized as one of the great historians, although in modern times he is often ranked a distant third. The most influential of the three, Herodotus of Halicarnassus, would in time be named the father of history by 1st century AD Roman orator Cicero. Herodotus would complete his work, titled Histories, around 430 BCE, and revolutionized the way history was told, for the methods he used to compose his account. Both he and his successor would preface their works with reasons for writing them. To simplify, Herodotus was concerned with memory and glory. He dealt, among other things, with the history of the ancient world, nowadays the ancient Near East, focusing on the rise and eventual decline of the Achaemenid Empire. Thucydides' overlapping account is more closely interested in the Greek world. He describes the Athenian Empire under Pericles and its conflict with various Peloponnesian factions in his account titled The History of the Peloponnesian War. This work he finished writing at about 410 BCE. In his historical narrative, he is concerned with portraying a picture of events connected to the exploration of the human condition. Thucydides leaves his account unended, giving Xenophon the opportunity to continue where he left off, making us categorize his Hellenica as continuous history, demonstrated by the fact that he introduces the Hellenica with the words, "and after all these things." He takes a very different approach in his Anabasis, which he completed around 390 BCE, where previous works were concerned with giving a largely third-person, anonymous account, taking into consideration multiple vocalizations and political and military events, using direct and indirect speech as a narrative device. The Anabasis differentiates itself by following a first-person perspective with a limited scope and only focused on one military theater, the Anabasis, or literally the expedition up from or up country. Aside from some of the author's remarks, Xenophon gives little indication as to his interests, so it is left to the reader to determine as the story unfolds. Noteworthy is that Xenophon was also concerned with anonymity, initially attributing his work under the pseudonym Themistogenes of Syracuse. So why has the Anabasis remained so influential? Why the continued interest? The innovative nature of the Anabasis concerns its presentation, it being the personal and complete report of a military expedition. As far as ancient literature is concerned, in its composition and format, may be only comparable to Julius Caesar's account of the Gallic Wars. It is written in a way that makes commentators describe it as one of the great adventure stories of history, making it hugely popular and accessible to its audience, already as early as the Roman period. The 2nd century AD author, Arrian of Wikimedia, emulated Xenophon in his historical retelling of Alexander's conquest of Persia, calling it the Anabasis of Alexander. And the Augustan-era critic Dionysius of Halicarnassus praises Xenophon, saying, "The historical subjects which he chose are fine and impressive, and appropriate for a philosopher." Even today, the interpretive depth of this work cannot be overstated. Let's have a look at some of the main themes and interests of the Anabasis. These points to a varying degree repeat themselves in the Hellenica. First, the book highlights the Persians' decline and the empire's weakness to invading forces, to a group of city-states that were constantly at odds with each other. The idea of a combined Greek army marching straight through the vast Persian Empire must have seemed unbelievable. Second, the superiority of Greek heavy infantry is highlighted throughout the account. even though the Persian military had heavy infantry. The case being made is that it was by no means comparable to the Greeks. Xenophon undercuts this point by showing the weakness of the Greeks' heavy infantry. As in the account, the Hellenes suffer from a lack of skilled horsemen, exposing key disadvantages of the hoplite formation. Third, the 10,000 Greeks forging a path through the Achaemenid Empire, surrounded by hostile powers, seems to represent characteristics of the Greek community at large, despite picturing the factionalism of the Hellenic world at the time. The contingent of mercenaries' only chance for survival is cooperation, understanding their common purpose, and working towards a shared goal, amid dangers lurking on all sides. In connection with this, and as later demonstrated, Xenophon notices the importance of leadership and the Greeks' ingenuity. Xenophon's time as a soldier must have informed his worldview. His interest in leadership, as it pertains to military command, is on full display in the Anabasis. He variously directs attention to the way leaders interact with their followers, and how leadership affects the military unit as a whole. He assures us that without leaders nothing good can be accomplished, and parts of the narrative can be seen as his own development into a proficient commander. A general, in his opinion, must attain mastery of himself and thereby serve as an example for his soldiers. The role of rhetoric skill is paramount in Xenophon's vision of the ideal leader. Speech must be the vehicle in which the individual takes part in public life and is to be honed by the man that would assume public office. The author shows commanders in different situations and illustrates what characteristics make a leader either successful or faulty. This character of a successful commander he interconnects with a sense of piety. Elements of this character include the awareness of his men's morale and the manipulation of it, as seen in the case of Clearchus. Are the men overconfident or unnecessarily fearful? And what can be done to adjust their perspective to avoid calamity? He must be energetic and brave, constantly taking charge of the situation and exhorting his troops to action, using his rhetoric skill to encourage them. Another means to achieve success would be to garner divine support. The commander must show his men how their cause is divinely ordained. One important aspect of piety he illustrates through the example of Xenophons. It is evident from reading that Xenophon's role as the antagonist is characterized by his faithlessness in view of men, but also of the gods, as he on multiple occasions breaks oaths. The ideal leader is to be a faithful and trustworthy individual. Justice is seen in the relationship between a person and the public. How one individual's agency affects society at large is demonstrated by the example of Cyrus and his continued and unrestrained attacks on his brother. Xenophon is interested in this reciprocity concerning justice also as it pertains to the gods. The trial of Orontes delineates some of the terms of reciprocity and justice. In this passage, Xenophon uses the Socratic method through Cyrus to demonstrate Orontes' injustice towards Cyrus personally, but also the entire assembly. Reportedly, Cyrus initiates the trial of Orontes with the words, "I have invited you here, my friends, that I may take advice with you and carry out whatever, in sight of God and man, it is right for me to do." Much scholarly effort has been put into a deeper understanding of Xenophon's Anabasis. It is a highly influential account written by one of the great historians of the classical period. A famous quote of Xenophon's sums up the benefit of engaging with literature. "If you consider what are called the virtues in mankind, you will find their growth is assisted by education and cultivation.